else's back, when the time for parting came, and the Baron von Koeldwethout and his followers rode gaily home. For 6 mortal weeks the bears and boars had a holiday. The houses of Koeldwethout and Swillenhausen were united. The spears rusted, and the Baron's bugle grew hoarse for lack of blowing. Those were great times for the 4–and–20; but alas, their high and palmy days had taken boots to themselves, and were already walking off. "My dear," said the Baroness. "My love," said the Baron. "Those coarse, noisy men—" "Which, ma'am?" said the Baron, starting. The Baroness pointed, from the window at which they stood, to the courtyard beneath, where the unconscious Lincoln greens were taking a copious stirrup cup, preparatory to issuing forth after a boar or two. "My hunting train, ma'am," said the Baron. "Disband them, love," murmured the Baroness. "Disband them!" cried the Baron, in amazement. "To please me, love," replied the Baroness. "To please the devil, ma'am," answered the Baron. Whereupon the Baroness uttered a great cry, and swooned away at the Baron's feet. What could the Baron do? He called for the lady's maid, and roared for the doctor, and then, rushing into the yard, kicked the 2 Lincoln greens who were the most used to it, and cursing the others all round, bade them go, but never mind where. I don't know the German for it, or I would put it delicately that way. It is not for me to say by what means, or by what degrees, some wives manage to keep down some husbands as they do, although I may have my private opinion on the subject, and may think that no member of Parliament ought to be married, inasmuch as 3 married members out of every 4 must vote according to their wives' consciences, if there be such things, and not according to their own. All I need say, just now, is, that the Baroness von Koeldwethout somehow or other acquired great control over the Baron von Koeldwethout, and, that, little by little, and bit by bit, and day by day, and year by year, the Baron got the worst of some disputed question, or was slyly unhorsed from some old hobby; and that by the time he was a fat hearty fellow of 48 or thereabouts, he had no feasting, no revelry, no hunting train, and no hunting; nothing in short that he liked, or used to have; and that, although he was as fierce as a lion, and as bold as brass, he was decidedly snubbed and put down, by his own lady, in his own castle of Grogzwig. Nor was this the whole extent of the Baron's misfortunes. About a year after his nuptials, there came into the world a lusty young Baron, in whose honour a great many fireworks were let off, and a great many dozens of wine drunk. But next year there came a young Baroness, and next year another young Baron, and so on, every year, either a Baron or Baroness, and one year both together, until the Baron found himself the father of a small family of 12. Upon every one of these anniversaries, the venerable Baroness von Swillenhausen was nervously sensitive for the well-being of her child, the Baroness von Koeldwethout; and although it was not found that the good lady ever did anything material towards contributing to her child's recovery, still she made it a point of duty to be as nervous as possible at the castle of Grogzwig, and to divide her time between moral observations on the Baron's housekeeping, and bewailing the hard lot of her unhappy daughter. And if the Baron of Grogzwig, a little hurt and irritated by this, took heart, and ventured to suggest that the wife was at least no worse off than the wives of other barons, the Baroness von Swillenhausen begged all persons to take notice, that nobody but she sympathized with her daughter's sufferings; upon which, her relations and friends remarked, that to be sure she did cry a great deal more than her son-in-law, and that if there were a hard-hearted brute alive, it was that Baron of Grogzwig. The poor Baron bore it all as long as he could, and when he could bear it no longer, lost his appetite and his spirits, and sat himself gloomily and dejectedly down. But there were worse troubles yet in store for him, and as they came on, his melancholy and sadness increased. Times changed. He got into debt. The Grogzwig coffers ran low, though the Swillenhausen family had looked upon them as inexhaustible; and just when the Baroness was on the point of making a 13th addition to the family pedigree, von Koeldwethout discovered that he had no means of replenishing them. "I don't see what is to be done," said the Baron. I think I'll kill myself." This was a bright idea. The Baron took an old hunting knife from a cupboard hard by, and having sharpened it on his boot, made what boys call an "offer" at his throat. "Hem!" said the Baron, stopping short. "Perhaps it's not sharp enough." The Baron sharpened it again, and made another offer, when his hand was arrested by a loud screaming among the young barons and baronesses, who had a nursery in an upstairs tower, with iron bars outside the window to prevent their tumbling out into the moat. "If I had been a bachelor," said the Baron, sighing, "I might have done it 50 times over, without being interrupted. Hallo! Put a flask of wine and the largest pipe in the little vaulted room behind the hall." One of the domestics, in a very kind manner, executed the Baron's order in the course of half an hour or so, and Von Koeldwethout being apprised thereof, strode to the vaulted room, the walls of which, being of dark shining wood, gleamed in the light of the blazing logs which were piled upon the hearth. The bottle and pipe were ready, and, upon the whole, the place looked very comfortable. "Leave the lamp," said the Baron. "Anything else, my lord?" inquired the domestic. "The room," replied the Baron. The domestic obeyed, and the Baron locked the door. "I'll smoke a last pipe," said the Baron, "and then I'll be off." So, putting the knife upon the table till he wanted it, and tossing off a goodly measure of wine, the Lord of Grogzwig threw himself back in his chair, stretched his legs out before the fire, and puffed away. He thought about a great many things; about his present troubles and past days of bachelorship, and about the Lincoln greens, long since dispersed up and down the country, no one knew whither; with the exception of 2 who had been unfortunately beheaded, and 4 who had killed themselves with drinking. His mind was running upon bears and boars, when in the process of draining his glass to the bottom, he raised his eyes, and saw, for the first time and with unbounded astonishment, that he was not alone. No, he was not; for, on the opposite side of the fire, there sat with folded arms a wrinkled, hideous figure, with deeply sunk and bloodshot eyes, and an immensely long cadaverous face, shadowed by jagged and matted locks of coarse black hair. He wore a kind of tunic, with a dull bluish color, which, the Baron observed, on regarding it attentively, was clasped or ornamented down the front with coffin handles. His legs, too, were encased in coffin plates as though in armor, and over his left shoulder he wore a short dusky cloak, which seemed made of a remnant of some pall. He took no notice of the Baron, but was intently eyeing the fire. "Halloa!" said the Baron, stamping his foot to attract attention. "Halloa!" replied the stranger, moving his eyes towards the Baron, but not his face or himself. "What now?" "What now?" replied the Baron, nothing daunted by his hollow voice and lustreless eyes. "I should ask that question. How did you get in here?" "Through the door," replied the figure. "What are you?" says the Baron. "A man," replied the figure. "I don't believe it," says the Baron. "Disbelieve it, then," says the figure. "I will," rejoined the Baron. The figure looked at the old Baron of Grogzwig for some time, and then said familiarly, "There's no coming over you, I see. I'm not a man." "What are you, then?" asked the Baron. "A genius," replied the figure. "You don't look much like one," returned the Baron scornfully. "I am the genius of despair and suicide," said the apparition. "Now you know me." With these words the apparition turned towards the Baron, as if composing himself for a talk, and, what was very remarkable was, that he threw his cloak aside, and displaying a stake, which was run through the centre of his body, pulled it out with a jerk, and laid it on the table, as composedly as if it had been a walking stick. "Now," said the figure, glancing at the hunting knife, "are you ready for me?" "Not quite," rejoined the Baron. "I must finish this pipe first." "Look sharp, then," said the figure. "You seem in a hurry," said the Baron. "Why, yes, I am," answered the figure. "They're doing a pretty brisk business in my way over in England and France just now, and my time is a good deal taken up." "Do you drink?" said the Baron, touching the bottle with the bowl of his pipe. 9 times out of 10, and then very